Alrighty, YouTube, back with another video here, and I kind of just wanted to bring you along with the ride. As you can see, I got the bottom part of the hood all painted and cleared, and it's looking real nice. And my plans now are to move on to the opposite side, which are the top side. But before I do that, I just wanted to mask everything off and just cover it up and protect it that way. What I do on the top side does not affect the bottom since it's all done here. So I'll mask it all up, get it all covered so that it's not exposed to the overspray and everything that's happening towards the top here. But as you can see, this hood is in fairly good shape. A lot of debris, corrosion, also some low, high spots, and we have some rust bubbles that also came up. But we'll address each problem individually. Now I gave it a quick wipe down with some clean strip just to kind of have the area prepped a little better. I have the longboard sander here, which is the flexi sander. Now because this hood has some curvatures, and this flexi sander also has a bottom board that flexes to meet some of the curves of the hood here. There are some areas where it will not work, but I have a sponge that I will use with some sandpaper to actually kind of cover those areas that I am not able to sand with the flexi sander. So to start, I'll just throw on a 180 grit here, kind of just scratch the surface, remove some of that clear coat just to kind of expose what's beneath it. And as you can see, there are areas here where the flexi sander did not even remove the clear, and those are our low spots. These are areas where I'll kind of sand down, etch it up, fill it up with some body filler, and then I'll sand it down again just to kind of level everything off so that the surface is much smoother. But as you can see, we do have some high spots where the metal actually became exposed after using the flexi sander. You want to make sure that you're careful also, because this is a large piece of panel here. When applying pressure to the flexi sander, that metal does flex, so there can be some confusion there when sanding down. So what you actually think is a low spot at times may not be. It's only because the amount of pressure that you applied to your flexi sander that might have just dug in a little deeper. Now to address that middle area where the chrome strip goes, I'm using this little sponge here, and this allows me to kind of do better work of the areas that where I cannot sand down with the flexi sander. I marked off all the areas where the low spots are, and also the rust bubbles and all of the other issues that come along to play here. I'll be using the porter cable as my sander to give me more control over the areas where the metal was exposed. I find this to be a better tool just to kind of feather out and blend the paint back to the metal. That way there's not too much of a differentiation. When I'm passing my hands through the panel here, everything feels a bit more smoother. And that's the goal when applying new paint. You want to make sure that the surface is nice, smooth, and I'd say to a glassy feel, to where when the new paint is applied, there's no variations and like different levels over your surface here. And this is the 3M body filler that I'll be using to fill up the low spots that I have. And also the rust retard, which I purchased from Amazon, which I will use to address the rust situation. There is not really much rust, but just the two spots that I pointed. And I will address those to where I remove all of the rust that is there so that it does not come back. So now just filling up the plate here with some body filler, got the hardener in there, and I'm pretty much on a time window when it comes to this 3M because it actually flashes off pretty quick. So I want to make sure I have this on a panel because it starts to harden within a matter of seconds. But here you go, all those low spots nicely filled, and then I'll just grab the flexi sander here, and I'll just keep sanding until the levels are actually surfaced to the same areas of these spots that were at the normal level. And kind of when I start to see that I'm removing the paint from the surrounding areas and that metal is becoming exposed, I know that the level of that low spot actually meets the neighboring areas, and that's how I know to stop, evaluate the situation, and then I decide whether I'm happy with the way things are here. Now that I've sanded down those areas, I'll move on to a 800 grit just to smoothen out the surface a little better. Just doing a hand test just to get a feel for how the panel feels. Want to make sure that it's smooth to the touch. So the smoother I can get the surface here, the much better the paint will actually lay down over this smoother surface. So I'll do a couple of things just to kind of examine. There's so many ways that you can check the progress of your work. I'm just using some water here, and I'll apply it to distinguish it as clear coat being applied to the surface. And I'll kind of angle myself just to kind of see how the water actually reflects over the panel, to actually show me if there's any abnormalities in the level here that I would like to achieve. So I'll wet it. It does evaporate, so I kind of wet, and with a damp rag I'll kind of just pass it through and just give it a nice look here just to see if it has that smooth, glassy surface. Now this is the degreaser that I'm preparing to apply before I actually apply the primer over the hood. I'll give it a good wipe down, make sure everything is clean with a microfiber towel, and just make sure that the surface is nicely degreased. Now we're applying our primer here, and it's pretty much just the left to right strokes. That's pretty much it. There's no big rocket science to how it's applied. Just make sure you keep a good distance. You stay at a nice speed to where you're not going too fast to where you're losing material over the panel, but at the same time you're going too slow to where you're kind of building up the material over the amount of the surface areas that you would not like. But as you can see here, I gave it 2 coats. The first one was just a mist coat just to get the material on there, and then the second one was to kind of seal off the area so that it looks much nicer for the paint. Because after that first coat there were some variations. You could actually look through it. There was a transparency to where the body filler and the yellow paint was actually still there, so I kind of wanted to seal it off. Now as you can see here, after I'd say about an hour, it's still flashing off here, and this is the different situations I come across with spraying the epoxy primer. Depending on the temperature of my garage, there are times where it flashes off pretty fast, and there are times where my garage can reach up to 100 degrees, I would say, and it's as if it does not flash as fast. But as you can see here, after a day of actually letting it flash, I examined everything, and there were a lot of pinholes over the body filler. So I'm actually glad that I did not move on directly to paint. So the decision that I made was to go through it with the long board sander again, give it a nice sand down with a 400 grit, because at the same time this primer did build up, so I was able to actually run it through with the 400 to smooth it out so that the areas were much more leveled. And after that, I applied another coat. I let that sit, just a light mist coat, and I let it sit for about 3 to 4 hours. And then I moved on to the Sublime Green here. Now, this is the single stage paint. And as you can see here, it actually laid down pretty nice. It's glassy, and I've met the goal that I was actually trying to achieve here. It looks real nice. It's shiny. And there's really no levels that seem to be off to me. And this is not the final process. And as you will see, I will apply a color pigmentation to match up the goal and the idea of the paint that I'm doing here. So I let it flash off for about, I'd say, 20 minutes. And then I moved on to the pigmentation here. You want to be careful with your flash times because this is a larger panel, and with that being said, there's more material being applied, so the flash times do vary. Smaller parts does not need that much flash time because it's less material, but when it comes to a large part, I come to see must give it more time to flash off, because as you can see here, I've created solvent pop over the hood, and I actually didn't know what this was. This is the first time that this actually happened to me, to where I applied the primer, the paint, and also the clear coat, and this is all within a matter of, I'd say, an hour. I pretty much gave everything the same amount of flash time that I normally do, but I actually created solvent pop over the clear coat. But never the worries. As you can see here, before moving on to do anything else, I've decided to give it a wet sand to see if I could actually save the clear coat. And this is actually 3 layers of clear that I've applied. Here you can see I did get a run, but I'll smooth that down to where it's nice and smooth with the neighboring areas. Now back to the solvent pop issue. I kind of did a little bit of research, and I was told that I did not allow the chemicals within the material to flash off at a certain amount of time. So I applied one layer of the material over another one, which was not fully flashed off, and then the gases were still giving off. And this is what actually happens when you do not allow a layer of material to flash off. But back onto the work here. As you can see, I'm working on saving it. You can see that I'm sanding it down, and I'm getting rid of all of the areas where the gases actually cause the bubbles to come up here. And I'm working with the orbital sander at this point to make sure that all of the levels are nicely, smoothly done. And be careful also, this is just the inner areas. All of the outer areas, you want to be cautious because you don't want to aggressively go through the corners, because they're much more sensitive to your tools here, to where you could actually kind of dig in too deep. And I don't want to dig back into the Sublime Green, which is actually beneath the pigmentation here, and also the clear coat. So I'm kind of doing a smooth run. This is a 800 grit that I'm using for the orbital sander here. And then all of the outside edges I'll pretty much do by hand. But as you can see, it looks a little dull, but it's real smooth. There are some glassy spots that are still there, which I will address also. And these corners here that I'm pointing at, I will actually do those by hand. But as you can see, I got real close just to lessen the amount of work that I had to do. But judging by both sides here, as you can see, the dull surface, it's actually smoother than the areas where you do still see the shine in the solvent pop. So I'm using water and just a sponge here, and I'm wet sanding all of the corners just to get it all back down to a smooth surface, because there's a considerable nice level of a clear coat that I have here. So when I do get ready to buff this out, that shine will actually present itself again. But you want to make sure that the preparation is actually done correctly so that you don't run into issues with the shine that you're trying to bring back to the panel here. It's time consuming, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're doing it to where everything is done correctly. Now, as you can see here, the corners are actually coming out nice. I'm being very cautious with that. Like I said, it's much more sensitive when you're addressing those areas, because I come to find the corners, actually you can remove the materials much easier than the center surfaces of the panel here. So just giving it a nice scratch down with the 800 grit sandpaper, get it nice and smooth, and then I'll move on to a 1500 grit just to remove the scratches from the 800, just to get it a bit smoother. That way when I do buff, I'm not working as hard to remove the scratches, but at the same time to reestablish the shine from the hood here. I'm not gonna let this discourage me though. And painting, these things, what I come to realize, they do happen. As much as I would have liked to just spray the clear and let it be, but it's good when you run into certain issues and then you build new skills and techniques to figure out how to correct and fix the issues that you go through. And there's sometimes with mistakes, this is the only way we actually can fix these problems. It's our mistakes that can be our best teachers. But as you can see here, I put out the 3M compound. I gave it a little wipe down. And I'm going through the area now with the buffer, and as you can see, it's all sanded down, and voila, here we go. As you can see, our clear coat has actually reestablished itself, and all of those areas, every area on top that had solvent pop, as you can see, it's shiny again. Now towards the middle, that run, there is a faint appearance of it. I will sand it down a little more to address that area, but other than that, YouTube, as you can see, I ran into an issue here, and I figured out how to fix that issue, and this is the outcome. I wanted to bring it outside here, that way you can kind of see a much better appearance and detail of the clear coat that is here. And it does have a slight color shift during different, I guess, lighting. It appears a little different, and I'm not sure if the camera is actually doing it good here. But at certain angles, the sublime green does pop, and others, you can actually see the pigment that was added onto the hood here. But nice and shiny. I'll give it another wet sand and buff, maybe with a 2000 grit, after I sand down that center area that still has that slight appearance of a run that is present. But other than that, YouTube, as you can see, the top of the hood here is actually shiny. It's looking nice. It's not lumpy. And the quality of it seems to be good here. And this is with the Fuji minimite 5 system that I used here with the 1.3 tip on a T model gun here.